Here's an athlete that I was able to work with in the gym for a while before we started working together on the skill side of things with the swing. And we were able to get some decent changes in presentation that translated pretty nicely as we have been able to do some new things with the swing here. So on the left, we have a situation where we can see how aggressively he's pulling that right side down and in, because he's getting pushed essentially so hard from left to right that he's needing a way to hold himself within his right foot. So without this strategy, yanking this top down strategy, yanking him down and in, he would be falling outside of his right foot. So he needs some way to hold himself within his base, and what he needs to do is essentially he basically closes off this entire right side, squeezes it, compresses it to try and keep him inside his base. Now, on this side here, on the right side, we can see that he starts to that side starts to decompress a bit, come back up as he's able to, again, come back inside of his base. He doesn't need to use that strategy anymore to hold himself within that right foot. So he's able to get some expansion, some space back here, because, again, he doesn't need to use that compressive strategy anymore. So we can even, what's interesting is we can even see some changes in the face here, which are, noteworthy. And so it's interesting to see how that this will set him up better for the swing changes that we were choosing to make. The fun stuff here, the swing, some of the changes he was able to make given some of the presentation changes and what that allowed for. So we're going to start all the way in setup here, which is, as I always talk about, setup is vitally important. It's called setup for a reason. So on the left, we have this before here, and we know from his presentation how he's fallen, essentially center of mass has gotten pushed way outside of his right foot, and he's needing to yank from the top down, back down and in to try and get him back inside of that right foot. So we know that the space that he has available to him where he can actually apply force down into the ground is going to be way out wide on that right side. So we see that in his setup here, right? First thing that stands out is just how wide he is, particularly when accounting for his structure as a narrower guy. Now, a wide stance isn't inherently a bad thing by any means. We just need to take it within context, right? We know this guy's structure, and we know that we're going to want him to work within a decently tight space. This could potentially be an impediment to that. So we got to think about, okay, why is he needing to set up this way? And again, this is the space that he has access to that he can put force down. This right leg has got to go way out wide to have any chance to apply down force at all. So we see also these wrinkles here in the setup. Basically, that's a right hip that is getting shoved way forward. So it almost looks like he's set up in an open stance here. He's not. He's actually set up neutral. What's going on here is this is just a right hip that is getting shoved way forward. This right leg is getting spun out as that right hip comes forward. And basically, we're in this very heavy, wide setup here, right? So this is just a heavy, wide, not a lot of space to go setup. And then here on the right, now that he's starting to come back inside of his base, he's able to set up a lot differently. So he's able to lay force down in a much tighter window here. So we see him come back underneath his hips a bit while holding the shape that we want in the right leg, because that's key here. It's not good enough to just get our legs underneath us, right? We got to actually apply down force with the shape that we want, which is what we're doing here. And now that we're able to do that, we see everything come back up. He's a lot lighter here. He verticalizes, and the hands tick up as well as everything gets pushed up. So now we're working on this much tighter axis here that aligns with his structure. This is the axis he's built on, and now he's able to set up in that space. Whereas here, we are on this very wide axis that doesn't really align with his structure. So if we're able to set up in essentially coherence with the way that we're structured, that's going to give us freedom of movement. All a setup should really give us is freedom of movement. That is the entire intent behind a setup, in my opinion. You got to set up with space to move. So we have that on the right. We don't have that on the left. Let's take it into the first move, or let's take it to heel lift here. So heel gets up right about here. So we see this big left to right push, right? So we have a right side that we know is very, very heavy, very far forward. What we need in order to get that backside to delay, which is what we need in order to, basically what we need is to go from lead side to backside to lead side in the swing, right? To go from lead side to backside, the backside's got to be able to delay. What we need for a delay is a stronger propulsive strategy on the lead side than the backside. Now, this is going to be really hard given the setup that we're in, right? So we're set up in a very heavy forward right side. So it's going to require a lot out of this left side to try and get a delay in that right side because we need the differential. So this is going to be a big lateral, a long, as far as time goes, a long lateral big move to try and create this differential that unfortunately, even on our best day, even without all these compensations, he probably won't have the space for, right? And given all the compensations, there's just no way that he can accommodate this wide of a move. So what happens is we see that right leg has no chance to hold. So basically, he's now outside of his base, and his left heel hasn't even come up yet. So that's where we're at now. And then on the right, left heel gets light, and we're here. We're nice tight inside of our base. Super clean move. Now we'll take it into peak leg lift. So already outside of our base, and we get kicked out. So his hips are getting basically kicked lateral here. And we have a big leg kick. Not a bad thing. I try and actually coach guys towards that sometimes, depending on what we're seeing. But it's interesting to note the difference here. So we've got a big leg kick. Hips are getting kicked out, right? So, and then here we'll see leg kick actually decreases. Now, that's not something we talked about at all or coached him to do. It just happened out of not needing it anymore. So the big leg kick it's going to help you basically push up, right? So here he's got a very heavy right side, and he needs to try and get that right side, get stuff to push up on that right side. So he's using a pretty aggressive leg kick to try and help facilitate that, which isn't the end of the world, but it's interesting to note that he no longer needs that, right? So he's inside of his base, and he's able to create that true downforce within his base to basically push up without the need for this big upward move with the lead leg. So that's interesting. And then we'll take it into the turnaround where, again, he's outside of his base. He's way outside his base. And his turnaround is the same strategy we see in the presentation, right? So the only way he can pull back in, so he needs to pull back inside of his base so he can get from right to left. So his strategy is this right side bendy move where he compresses that right rib cage to try and get back inside the right foot so he can push across, which he doesn't really do successfully. But this turns the turn into this big side bendy, not tight move, right? So basically it's just a big crunch with the right side that he tries to turn through. With that comes a left side that gets yanked up out of the ground pretty quickly, spun out, right? And then on this side here, we see our transition. Again, we're inside our base. We don't need to make this side bendy move to get back in our base. All we need to do is just turn it around, right? Nice, clean turnaround here. Take it to contact. We see that left side. Again, there's work to be done here, no doubt. Left side holds a bit better for sure, which is great. But overall, this is how a significant change in presentation like that can allow for you to do a lot of really cool things within the swing. So hopefully that made sense. If it didn't, feel free to ask questions in the comments.